My guest this week is Bonnie Lecat, and in the podcast, you may hear me call or refer to her as Bonnie Lecat, but it's actually Bonnie Lecat, and it's spelled Bonnieelecat. Her website is Bonnie Lecat Designs, and it's also BonnieLecatDesigns, Bonnie Lecat Designs.
Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. This week, my guest is Bonnie Lecat, and she runs the Etsy shop Bonnie Lecat, and she sells inspirational art, signs, and personalized gifts. She's been selling on Etsy since 2012 and has hit over 5,000 sales since then. She also runs her own website, Bonnie Lecat Designs, and that's at bonnielecatdesigns.com. I will link to that in the show notes for this episode. Bonnie, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Ijama. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you. And you do so much. And I wanted to say everything you do. And I was like, well, no, it's better coming from you. So before we start, can you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes. I'm an artist. I have been a full-time professional artist for a lot of years. I have been an artist for pretty much my whole life, which I guess you hear from a lot of different artists. You know, I kind of grew up and started drawing as soon as I could hold a crayon. But I studied art in college, and I have done many things during my art career. I have worked as an art director, an illustrator, a designer. I have done decorative finishes on walls and murals on walls. And now finally I've landed in Etsy and in my online shop and teaching. And I create the artwork that I use to create prints and different gift items and different home decor items that I sell online.
So Bonnie, in the past, when you worked as an art director, illustrator, etc., were you doing that for other people? Were you doing that as a job? And now the art you create is you've made your own business out of selling your art and teaching.
Well, actually, it was a little bit of both. I started out working as an employee at different advertising and marketing agencies, and eventually branched out on my own and had a freelance business doing that. And that, since then, that was more years ago, probably than I care to admit. But since then, yes, I've been on my own, working as my own boss and having my own business.
When you decided to branch out, was Etsy your first port of call, or did you start doing freelance work for clients on the side independently?
Well, that was actually before Etsy was even around that I branched out on my own. So, yes, I first learned about Etsy in 2012, and I had already been working as a freelance graphic designer and illustrator, and I was doing faux finishes and things like that at the time. So then I started a shop in 2012, and I'm still there.
And now, so when you joined Etsy, or when you came onto the platform at the time, how different was it then to what it is today?
Well, when I first learned of Etsy, I was really excited, and I thought, oh, okay, here's this online platform where I could just take some of my art that I just had sitting around that I had made and just sell it. So I put like 3 paintings on there. I just randomly picked a price, and I just waited for something to happen. And nothing happened, of course. So I guess that's not really answering your question. It was different for me from my perspective.
Yeah.
It was all very new, and I don't think as many people knew about it.
Yeah.
at the time. I think they have a lot more categories and things that they offer now. Definitely a lot more sellers and a lot more opportunities for sellers. I think that the people at Etsy work really hard to help sellers be successful and have buyers have a good experience. And I know that they make changes all the time. I can't really remember because when I first started, I wasn't nearly as engaged with the platform as I am now. I didn't really start consciously trying to work sort of Etsy until about 2015 when a light bulb went off. I needed a gift. I needed a baptism gift for someone. And I said, oh, I'll go to Etsy and look up something. And then I went, well, why don't I just make something? So that actually became my first item. I took pictures of it and I listed it and it just started to sell. So that sort of was my springboard moment, my light bulb moment into what I should and could sell on Etsy by really considering what are other people looking for on Etsy. I saw myself, I was the customer. So I'm kind of rambling. Sorry, I'm probably getting away from the initial question.
No. But that makes perfect sense. And you said something that did catch my interest. Initially, when you put your first product up, you just you just priced it randomly. Has your pricing strategy changed now?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it definitely has because pricing is tricky and it's very complicated. And especially when you're new to Etsy or to any kind of, maybe starting your own business and selling your own products, it's sort of a mystery. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on a class right now that's geared toward Etsy sellers. And that's one of the sections in my class is trying to help sellers by giving them a formula that they can use to get started. And so they feel like they sort of know what they're doing and don't just randomly pick a price.
Yeah.
So what I did at first was just, I guessed a price that I hoped people would pay that I thought I wanted and put it on there. I'm a lot more strategic now. I use typically what's called cost-based or cost-plus pricing.
Okay.
And to come up with that price, I keep a detailed list of all of the supplies that I use for that particular item. And I know exactly what I spend to create the item. I keep track of how long it takes me to make it. And then I pay myself a salary based on that. And then I keep track of all my overhead expenses, things like, utilities and printer ink and all of that. I keep careful track of that so that I know what I spend each month. And then I use a month as a unit of time to then divide up by the number of sales I typically get in a month to add that onto my price. And this is probably all sounding super confusing, but
no, it all makes sense because I think these are little costs of doing business that a lot of us forget to take into consideration when we're pricing our items, utilities and time and overhead costs that we kind of see as separate, but without accounting for those, we might not be able to. We're probably undercharging, I'm assuming.
Exactly. I think it's common for people to kind of think, well, this cost me $5 to make, so I'll charge $10 for it, and forget to pay themselves a salary, forget to cover all of their additional expenses, like maybe the gas it takes to go to the post office every day, things like that. And also one thing I didn't consider when I first started my shop, I now sell some of my items in other retail stores. You have to take that into consideration when you're initially pricing a product, that if you ever want to sell it wholesale, you have to offer it at half that price in order to make a profit. So you have to make sure that your base price or your wholesale price, you're still making a profit then. So as I said, I'm doing this class, and it outlines a little bit more, visually, so people could actually look at something that would help them understand how to price things correctly.
Okay.
But I also then, once I do come up with a wholesale and a retail price, I check out the competition and I kind of see, where does my item compare? How does it compare?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what my brand is and what my brand values are. Do I want to be the cheapest product? Do I want to be more of a prestige product? What makes sense for my brand?
Mm.
And then I test out the price and I see what works. And sometimes you have to adjust. Sometimes maybe you have to lower it. Sometimes, and this is a true story, one of my first products, it got favorited and favorited and favorited and favorited, but nobody would buy. I started raising the price, and all of a sudden I started getting so many sales.
Huh.
And so I always remind myself of that. It's a lot more than just what your expenses are. You have to take a lot more into consideration. And I think trial and error with different products is a good way to do it too. And to, like I said, checking out your competition and then taking all these other actual costs into consideration first.
So Bonnie, I have heard that theory about how, other sellers have said they will raise prices and sales go up. Sales numbers go up, not just income from the sales because of the raised prices. Have you ever had to lower your prices when you're testing out a price to see if that stirs sales? Does that make sense?
Yes, that totally makes sense. I think that the first thing that we all want to do is say, oh, well, I'll lower my price so that people buy it.
Yeah.
I try to stop myself from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have offered sales to see if that makes a difference. I try not to do too many sales, but just because I don't want to train my customers to wait for a sale in order to make a purchase.
Yes.
So, I don't really do that often, but I do when I want to chicken out and just see.
Yeah.
But I try to maintain a certain level of like product value and kind of base all my new products with the same sort of pricing structure so that it makes sense to my customers and they kind of know what to expect.
Okay.
So when something works, I can sort of use that as a guideline for new products, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I have to say, I'm one of those types of customers that certain platforms have trained me to wait for sales, which, as a customer, I like, because I'm like,
right.
Well, I know how to work the system. I'll just go and I'll look at something and I'll browse it for long enough and then I won't buy. And then I know in a couple of days or so, I'm going to get an email saying, hey, here's a coupon, or, the price has dropped, and then I'll buy. And as a seller, you don't want to train your customers to behave that way, or you don't want to reward that behavior.
Right. I mean, the big box sellers, we just, as Etsy sellers, we just really can't compete with like the prices of, say, a Hobby Lobby or Michael's with our products. And I think, there's the tendency to try to do that, but we just don't have the volume of sales and we can't get our supplies at that low of a cost to make it worth our while.
And so that's something you're going to be teaching in your upcoming class, in addition to how to create a product that will sell, packaging, how to create a great listing, and you'll also talk about marketing and branding, which we'll talk about now. And just for anyone who is curious about this product, this course, it's going to be on Skillshare. I will have a link to the course in the show notes for this episode, so you can go and check it out, and see what Bonnie is teaching. Bonnie, what else, or what can a prospective student expect to get from the course by taking it?
Well, it's geared for people who maybe have been considering opening a shop and don't really know where to start, or maybe for Etsy sellers who have already opened a shop and just, are hearing crickets and want some things, some action steps that they can take to try to improve their sales. It's really sort of an overview, and I just couldn't pack everything into one class.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do with this class is sort of introduce my students to these concepts, and I'm also going to include some resources. So if there is an area, or maybe all 5 of the areas where they need more education, I'm going to lead them where to go, and I'm going to introduce the topic to them. And hopefully it'll help people have more successful shops. That's my end goal.
Okay. And now for anyone who isn't familiar with Skillshare, how it works is you pay for access to the platform and then you can take the classes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So you're not buying just Bonnie's class. When you register on Skillshare, you actually have access to her class and then some others as well. Of course, we want you to check out Bonnie's class, but just so you know how it works when you land on Skillshare, if you've never been there. So the link I will have will take you directly to Bonnie's course so that you can check that out. I had another question about it. Is it specifically for sellers of just handmade products, or can sellers who are in the vintage and supplies categories also benefit?
Oh, absolutely. It's actually, I love Skillshare. I'm a member as well as a teacher. I'm a lifelong learner, and I never want to stop learning. And yeah. I would just anticipate that most of the people who are listening to the podcast kind of share my same addiction to learning.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Skillshare, it's awesome. There are so many different things on there that you would never even imagine.
Yes.
They have everything from art and craft classes to, they have a lot of business classes and even like lifestyle classes, meditation, journaling, as well as any particular skills. And it's wonderful because there are like bite-sized classes and there are giant classes. And if you join, you have access to as many as you can and want to do.
Yeah.
And here's a little bonus for anyone listening and wants to check it out. If you follow that link and you sign up, you get 2 free months to check it out.
Just about to say that.
Yeah, which is great. And then you can even, you don't have to, if you don't like it, you don't have to continue and you don't have to pay anything.
Yes.
So it's really worth your while, at least just to check it out.
Yes. And I would also like to mention, I am an affiliate of Skillshare. And yes. And so what that means is if you click through using the link that I put, I'll get some type of referral credit. I'm not sure what it is. I really need to check. You'll still get the 2 free months, which, you can cancel before then. But then if you choose to stay on, I think I get some points for referring you to the site. Yeah. I was going to ask another question about the class. Okay, so Etsy is changing on an almost weekly, sometimes it feels like daily basis.
Right.
Is your class going to be flexible enough to keep up with the changes that come along on Etsy so that when someone does register to take it and something changes, they can easily go back into your class and get caught up on what the new changes are?
Yes, one of the nice things is that I can go back to any of the classes and make additions or changes to anything that's already there. So I'll make sure if anything changes drastically to go in and get updates so that anybody taking the class is getting current information. And also, if you do decide to take the class, I would encourage you to follow me on Skillshare, and that way you'll be notified if I do make any changes or add anything else. Like I'm considering doing maybe some more specific skills. Like I said, the first class I'm offering is going to be kind of an overview, and I might do some more classes that deal with more specific Etsy issues to help sellers, when Etsy makes a change, kind of explaining what's going on.
Okay.
Because I like to really keep up to date in the forums and pay attention and understand all the changes that they're making. And I think that's really helpful to the success of a shop.
Okay. There are a couple of things I want to talk to you about. One has to do with your listings. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you're listening and you want to get a feel for what it will be like to take Bonnie's class, Bonnie offers a 5-day gallery wall challenge, which you can sign up to be a part of for free. Bonnie, do you want to explain what that is?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is listed on my website. And what it is just a 5-day, and it doesn't take 5 whole days. It's just broken up into little sections so that it's easier to do and it's a little more manageable. And it is for people who have artwork laying around your house that is maybe leaning against the wall, or you haven't bought frames yet and you just don't know how to put it together. It's just an emailed task every day that helps you finally get that done and get your artwork up on the wall.
Do you tell us what kind of equipment and supplies we will need?
Absolutely. That's part of the class.
Okay. All right. So if you want to sign up for that, you can do so at Bonnie Lecat Designs. That's BonnieLecatDesigns.com. I will link directly to Bonnie's website, and you can sign up for the 5-day gallery wall challenge there. You can also check out everything else she's doing on her website, which actually, since we're on there now, let's talk about it. Did you build this site yourself?
No, I actually had a web designer. Her name is Amanda Creek, and she's wonderful.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I can give you her information too to link to if you want to.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because she's fantastic and she is very helpful, and she actually teaches a lot. She's been a mentor to me as well as a designer. She has just a world of web design and creative business knowledge. So she's a good one to know. And I did want to mention before I forget that the Gallery Wall Challenge is completely free. It's just something to, help my customers out. There's no charge for that.
Okay. Great. So Amanda helped build this site. So on this site, you have both your shop, your e-commerce shop, and you blog as well, and you offer classes. So this is like your main hub of everything Bonnie Lecat Designs.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay. Now, on social media, when you do promotions, are you promoting this more than your Etsy shop, or do you have social media accounts that are specifically for your Etsy shop and then some that are specifically for your own personal home on the web here?
I sell pretty much the same items in both places.
Okay.
So I don't have separate accounts because it's basically, the same things that I offer on both.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes link to one, sometimes link to the other. Sometimes I will do more than one post, way more than one post for a particular product, and then link to it in different places and see which one works best.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. And you also blog. How do you choose what topics to blog about? Do you have a theme for the month, or do you go based on what's happening just at the time that you're creating a post?
Well, I'm always working on new strategies. Right now, I'm working on doing some blog posts that will sort of break down the things that I'm teaching on Skillshare. I'm going to be focusing on that for a little while. And maybe I will have posts that have to do with my particular products here and there, but I'm planning on doing more uh, sort of maybe some step by steps and
Okay.
things that help you get to sort of the basics, like maybe business basics for Etsy or artists in general,
Yeah.
and maybe like tools of the trade, things like that.
Okay. One of the things I like looking at your Etsy shop is how you write your titles. And I noticed that your titles are really like groups of keywords that people search for. How did you come up with this strategy for titling your listings? And have you found that it works better than um, other methods?
Well, that is actually something that I just started trying,
Oh,
and I learned about that on Marmalade.
okay.
So I have yet to see, I don't have like enough analytics yet to say if that's working better, but
Okay.
I'm giving it a shot because it seemed to make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it seems like those are all things like just looking at different listings. If someone were to put in a search in the search bar, that's something they would search for, and we know that titles hold a lot of weight in search. At least
Hmm.
historically they have. And so I would be curious to find out just how, what results you get from that.
Yes, I am too. I'm hopefully, I'm optimistic, I guess.
Optimistic. Yes. Now, let's talk about time management. So, you're doing a lot. You're running the Etsy shop, you have the e-commerce website, you also teach classes. What does a typical day look like for you? How do you prioritize what to work on and when?
Oh boy, that's a toughie. I have to stay organized. I have to make to-do lists. I recently started bullet journaling, if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is. What is bullet journaling?
Well, it's basically instead of buying um, a published planner that somebody else has designed,
Mm-hmm.
it's really good for creative people because you can kind of design it however you need it to be each day and or each month. However, I mean, if you look up bullet journaling on YouTube or anything like that, you can see tons and tons of examples. And I know there are actually a lot of Etsy sellers, I think, who sell bullet journal pages. I'm pretty sure, like printables and things like that. But
Okay.
it just helps you stay organized in a way that is best for you.
Okay.
So to organize and prioritize, I like to write everything down, sort of do a brain dump,
Mm-hmm.
and try to look at the big picture of what my goals are. Goals are really important so that I don't get off track.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super easily distracted, as I'm sure a lot of the listeners here are, because when you have a creative mind,
Oh man.
sometimes it's
It's
just like
horrible.
wind
Yes.
in there. So that's why I have to make to-do lists, and I try to keep off of my phone as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried different techniques for production, like the Pomodoro technique and um, things like that. And I just stay at it.
Does the
And with
Pomodoro technique work for you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh no, you're fine. Not really. I just because of how my brain works,
Okay.
I I just am kind of a little bit of a rebel. So if I have a lot of tasks listed there, I can just sort of click away at them. If I put the time that it needs, I can fit them in where they go. The
Yeah.
Pomodoro technique is more about like setting a timer.
Yeah.
So the rebel in me wants to do something else if I say I have to. Like to kind of choose what's off the list and change it up as I go. But
Yeah.
it's a battle. It is a battle for me, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. And I ask because I've tried it before and it worked initially, but after a while, like you, I started to talk myself out of it. Like, well, no, I don't need to do this for 20 minutes. I can do it
Mm-hmm.
in 15 and then use 5 minutes to do something else.
Right.
And for anyone who doesn't know what the Pomodoro technique is, it's just a system of helping you focus on one task for a set period of time, and then you take a break for, a fixed period of time, then you repeat the cycle. And I believe it's 20 minutes of focused work and 5 minutes or so of rest or, break, and then you
Yeah.
repeat something like that.
There's actually Skillshare classes on the Pomodoro technique. If anybody is trying out Skillshare, you can look for it there. And if you want to check out the Pomodoro technique,
Yeah.
for some people, I'm sure it works. It just sort of depends how your brain,
Yeah, the
works
person I
best.
heard about it from swore by it. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I thought, okay, maybe this will help me, stay more organized and focused. But I found for me, pressure works. Like if I'm on a
Mm-hmm.
time crunch, if my back is to the wall, I get my best work done when
Right.
when I have a deadline to meet and it's close, or first thing in the morning when my brain is fresh. But
Oh,
middle
I'm the
of the
same.
day, I'm just like all over the place.
Right. I think the trick is to learn when you're at your best and what to watch out for that knocks you off track. Like you, I'm a morning person, so I get
Yeah,
my best work done when the sun's coming up, and after about 8 o'clock at night, I'm sort of brain dead. So
done. Yes. Right about then is when I start looking for some reality TV because my brain is no good.
exactly, I'm the same.
Okay. So you use bullet journaling. Have you found that to be effective and to work better for you because it gives you the flexibility to prioritize things the way you want to?
Exactly. It like
Okay.
answers that rebel in me. It makes me, I'm doing it on my terms in my
Okay.
way. And that just, you know, for whatever reason, works better for me. That I can pick
Okay.
and choose the task that I want to fit into this slot as my day goes.
Okay.
But it is, like I said, it is a battle for me. I'm not going to pretend
Yeah.
that I've got that skill mastered. But, that's what makes life interesting, right? Just keep living and learning
Yeah.
and trying.
So, speaking about promoting your Etsy shop, I know we touched on it a little bit, well, more so with your website and social media. Do you have a specific strategy that you follow? Is that something that you prioritize as part of your bullet journaling, is dedicated and devoted time to focusing on social media, or is it just something that you throw in there as you go along?
Well, I'm actually working on that right now, and I'm trying to decide. There's a lot of platforms out there that help you to schedule, schedulers for your social media,
Yes.
and that is really on my to-do list right now because it takes so much time otherwise. So I'm looking at a few different things. Up until now, I've been sort of sporadic
Mhm.
and not strategic. And I think it will be in my best interest to have a plan for that, like everything else in
Yeah.
business, and also to automate things. So, like there's Postcron and Tailwind and Hootsuite and Planoly. There's so many of these platforms
Yes.
that help business owners, and especially if you're a small business owner, or for me, it's right now, it's just me. So there's a lot of balls I have in the air every day. If I could maybe once a month or once a week get things automated, that will free up my time to maybe generating new product ideas instead of spending so much time on marketing and social media. It also takes away that temptation to sort of get sucked into the social media and lose time during the day, you know.
Yes. I yeah, I agree completely. And some of the tools that you mentioned, I've used, and some I want to learn how to use.
Mhm.
I've used Hootsuite before, and it was great. I liked it because when I was using it, I was using social media differently. I was more active on Twitter, and so it was great for scheduling tweets and posts. What I found over time was that even though I wasn't live posting, um I liked to interact live, but then something changed on Twitter where they don't always tell you when somebody's interacting with you. And so people will interact with you and then you just don't know because you're not getting the notifications. But
Oh.
that did save a lot of time, and it did, in a way make me look more active, but even though I really wasn't. But I found that based on where I get more traffic, perhaps Twitter was not necessarily the best place to be focusing my attention, which, could be, a word for somebody is look at where most of your traffic is coming from and then figure out how to master that particular platform.
Yes, I totally agree. I don't do Twitter that much for that reason.
Yeah.
And there's so many. It's if you try to do Twitter and Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, and it just there's your whole day. So,
yes.
and why waste your time on a platform if your customers really aren't there or aren't engaging with you? It's better to just focus on what works, I feel like.
Yeah. How much time do you devote to SEO, both SEO for your Etsy shop, your e-commerce site, and your blog, if any at all?
Oh, a lot. And it seems like the more I know, the more I learn that I need to know.
Yes.
As far as SEO goes. I mean, it's pretty complicated. I'm always trying to learn more about analytics and keywords and site stats and things like that. And that's one of the changes that Etsy has done. I think they are really trying to give sellers a lot more information so that they can make good decisions moving forward in their shop. So, knowing SEO, being familiar with keywords and how to use the Etsy dashboard. Same thing with if you have WooCommerce, or I would imagine Shopify or any of the other e-commerce sites. If you, to really become familiar with how to get ahead and what the algorithms are and how to name your products, how to get found, is just, so I spend a lot of time on it, and I don't anticipate, not, because I think it's the only way to keep on track and keep your products in front of people.
Yes. And for anyone who doesn't know, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And to get into what that is would be actually a whole different type of podcast, not this one.
Yes.
But basically a way to get traffic to your site from search engines and any. It could be Google or Bing, Yahoo, as well as the Etsy search, getting traffic to your shop. And it's a whole science or art. I don't even know what it is, but it's
I think
something.
It's a little of both.
It's a little of both. But yes, it's something we all need to pay attention to. And, like Bonnie said, the more you learn about it, the more you realize I don't know. There's so much I don't know. I'm learning this, but then I'm also learning I don't know a lot.
And I need to know this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
In addition to that.
Yes.
So, but that's what makes owning a business exciting, I guess, too.
Yeah. Now, have you or do you ever think that you would like your business to scale to the point where you would need to hire additional help? Or is your goal or your plan to keep it comfortable for one person?
Well, that's a really good question, because when I first opened my shop, I had so many big ideas that I didn't really have they weren't defined goals. They were just I'm going to sell in wholesale, and I'm going to have all these retail shops that sell my stuff, and I want to have a beautiful studio with 10 employees and just millions of things that were way too much for one person. And now I really work all the time on setting realistic goals and really kind of asking myself a lot of questions when I get a new idea, like what you're at. Do I want to hire people? What does that really mean
Yeah.
for me? And does that really suit me and my brand and what I want from my business and what I want from my life? So I think I've gotten to the point where I've decided that I really like just working on my own and hiring things outside is for outside help, and just keeping it to a minimum as far as trying different things. I try like one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And so one way that I'm tackling that is, once I decided that, I thought, okay, I need to automate my social media, and I'm trying to work on building passive income through partnering with different people who can drop ship my items, print and drop ship my items, so that I don't have to constantly spend a lot of my day making the same thing over and over again, because I get a little bored with doing the same things over and over. So that works for me. But I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that for me. And I think for any of your listeners, I just really recommend taking a step back and looking at, what do I really want for my business? Okay, so if you come up with an idea that you want to hire people, just figure out, what does that really mean? Do I want that? Do I want to do that? Do I want people in my house? Do I want to set up payroll, or house, or wherever your studio is? Do I want to rent a studio or a building? And then trying to make decisions in that way.
I like that, and thank you for that response, because I think sometimes we don't always think through what scaling looks like for us as our own individual business owners. For some of us, scaling does mean bringing in employees, whether part-time or full-time, in-house, in-house being into your business, where they show up every day, or a few days a week. And for another person, scaling might be, like you said, outsourcing certain things, so certain tasks that you don't want to do, or I don't want to do, just having someone do that. For instance, like you said, Amanda did your web design, just outsourcing that, so you're not spending that time. Because I know a lot of, like, I have spent hours that I really, in retrospect, should not have spent trying to build my own website. Whereas, that would have been a good task to outsource to someone else, so I could have focused on something that, was more worth my time.
Right.
And so that's a form of scaling too, is outsourcing certain things. And so it's good for us as individual, business owners or people with Etsy shops to think of what scaling looks like to us, and then make it a determination about how we want to do that.
Exactly, because sometimes you might make a decision to do something, and it'll lead you down a path that you really didn't intend it to.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I know, because there are things I've thought, okay, I should learn how to do this. And then I end up buying a course that, I think is going to teach me how to do it. And then, I'm taking this course, and, it's taking forever to get through that. And before I know it, so much that could have been done gets left undone, because I'm trying to learn how to do this one thing.
Yeah.
Which at the end of the day, do I really need to be doing that particular one thing? There are some things, yes, but a lot of them, no.
Exactly.
Now, how much time right now would you say it takes to do everything that's involved in your business? So running your shop, doing the admin, fulfilling orders, creating. How much time are you spending on just all of that, to give someone who's listening a realistic view of what it really takes to run a successful shop and business?
It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I love it. So it doesn't always feel like work to me. And I'm fortunate to have a studio in my home. I converted my basement into an art studio, and it's great and it's awful all at the same time, because I love to work, so I end up working more hours than I probably should, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So to answer your question, I work every single day. There's not many days that I take the whole day off. So I would guess I work maybe 60 hours a week. But you have to put the time in to see results, I think. There's just so much that you have to do. I'm sure you understand. And plus, I because I love what I do, I sometimes maybe take a little bit longer to do some things that the line's kind of fuzzy between work and play for me, which I guess is a really good thing. So
yes, that is a good thing. And as someone put it not too long ago on the podcast, you have to show up every day if you want to get the results that you're aiming for. You have to actually show up to do the work.
Yep.
Now, speaking of taking time off, so because your work and your business is so intertwined with your personal life, how do you make the designation when you need to take time off if you're going on vacation, and what do you do? Do you put your whole shop on vacation? Do you just change your processing time so that you don't have to put the shop on vacation, etc.? How do you handle taking time off?
Well, I have done it. I've tried it a few different ways. And for me, I did not have luck when I shut my shop. It was nice to not have that constant need to work. And I know sometimes, we all need to do that.
Yes.
But the result of that was that I lost, like for a while, I lost views. So I don't know if that's the case with everybody, but that was the case for me. So what I do now is I adjust processing times when I need to take time off. And I always make myself available to answer questions. I think that's really important because I feel like you got to strike when the iron's hot. If somebody answers or is curious about a product, get back to them as quickly as you can. Because they're just going to move on, otherwise. Or not always, but, your best chances of making the sale is answering as quickly as you can.
Yes. And I've done that as well, changing my processing time. I found that I actually prefer that to shutting down my shop, especially if it's just like a long weekend getaway or something where, if I'm not leaving the country where I really, might not have access, I will just extend the processing time. And for anyone who doesn't understand what that means, when you have your Etsy shop and you set up your shipping rules for a particular item, and you can do it in bulk for everything or on an individual item basis, you determine what your processing time will be. And that's a set number of days that you have to prepare the product or make it or, get it ready to be shipped. And it goes anywhere from 1 day to, I think, up to a week or so. If not longer, I'm not sure. And so if you're going to be gone for, say, a long weekend or even 7 days, you can set your processing time for longer than that so that you don't get penalized for not shipping out on time. And Etsy will, if you go into the app or log into your account on the computer, it will tell you, okay, you need to ship this in 5 days. You need to ship this in 4 days, 3 days too. So you'll see a countdown. So you know that you have a deadline to send it out by. And so if you need to buy yourself time, you can increase your processing time so that it gives you time to get back home and do what you need to do to get that out there. Now, as far as you said, you always like to make yourself available, like to respond to convos and whatnot. Have you found that you use the snippets feature in the Etsy convos or not much?
I actually do. Because I think a lot of times I get similar questions. And anything that I get asked a lot, I try to put in my frequently asked questions. But if it's something that's going to be totally personalized, depending on the customer, I'll answer them. But there's a few things that I do use the snippets for.
Okay.
Do you?
I have in the past when I've gone away. So I'll use the snippets if someone sends me a message and it's, let's say I'm taking a long weekend and I've increased the processing time and they ask a question. The first, I will change the dates. So I have in there, I'll be gone from, this date to this date, but I'll respond to your message as soon as I can. If it's urgent, please respond and let me know. So I'll use that so that when I'm, not if I'm on vacation or taking some time off, it gives me time to respond when I have some downtime and I don't feel like I have to respond right there and then. If you have the app on the phone, you'll see the message right away. But then I'll know that automatically this person is going to get that message that says, hey, I'm gone, but I'll respond. Give me a few hours.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So then you're not so pressured to always be on it because, like you said, there'll come times when as a seller, you just need a break. You just need to just take some time off and not have to always be on, like thinking about it. So it's helpful for that. In addition to putting it in my announcements, although I feel like sometimes people don't always read the announcements.
Right. So, I think you're right.
There's a lot people don't always read. So any way that it can be reiterated, the message, I will try and say it multiple times to people. Now, there's also the updates feature. Do you find that you use that a lot or at all? And if you have used it in the past, did you find that it did help to drive traffic to the listings that you highlighted?
Well, I have to confess, I don't use the updates as often as I probably should. When it first started, I was doing it a lot and I don't think I was seeing much of a difference. Yeah. So I kind of dropped off. I should actually try that again. It's kind of one of those things that I think, I need to do that. Put it on my list.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a good opportunity, something else to try, maybe.
Yeah.
It works. I don't know.
And I say that too, because when it first came out, I was all over the updates. I was using it quite a lot. And I think I saw bursts of, interest, but I knew that was directly correlated to the fact that, people would see it right then and there and then respond to that listing. But it wasn't anything that was necessarily sustained. But like you said, I think it's there so you can use it on an ongoing basis and it doesn't bring you consistent traffic, but if you just want to get quick attention to something, I think it's good for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I think everybody should, if they have a store, if they have a shop, they should try it, see if it works.
Yeah. Now, when you get a new idea for a product, how long typically does it take you from the time you get the concept to executing it to having it up and listed in your shop?
Wow. Well, I would have to say it varies because I get ideas too often.
More often too many, too often.
More than I can keep up with. And sometimes, have you ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, where she talks about ideas like being sort of like a tangible thing that are out there in the universe, and then they come, and if you don't act on them, somebody else will do it.
No.
It's sort of an interesting thing. Well, sometimes I get an idea and it's enough to make me drop everything and just sit down and do it. Sometimes I've just I had to stop everything and do it and list it, and it ends up being really successful. Other ideas I sort of put on the back burner. but I try not to take too much time to develop an idea, because the bottom line is that it varies. It just depends on how busy I am with other things and how powerful and how connected I am to the idea.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you mentioned that theory, because I feel like I've missed so many opportunities. I've not really heard this theory that Elizabeth Gilbert put out that you mentioned. But yes, there are times where I'll get an idea for something, and in my head, I think it's just the best thing since sliced bread. And, I will get distracted and not do it. And now I'm wondering how many great opportunities I've probably missed out on just because I didn't sit down to execute. So now I'm going to think differently when I get an idea I feel really strongly about.
Although sometimes I kind of keep a running list in my bullet journal of ideas.
Yeah.
And there are some ideas, like you said, that I think, oh my gosh, this is going to be the thing,
Yeah.
And then I come back later and look at it and go, no, I don't want to do that. So I guess it just depends.
Depends. What's a lesson about selling on Etsy that you feel you learned the hard way, and you can probably save someone who's listening now from learning it the hard way too?
Oh, wow. There's probably a lot of things. One thing that I've learned is to really try to understand your customer. Mm-hmm. And that's an ongoing thing for any business or brand, I think. But like I said earlier in the conversation, when I first opened the shop, I didn't really understand that. And I made what I sold sort of about what I wanted to sell, not what my customer wants to buy. Mm. So I think it's really important to think about that before you put the time and effort into creating and listing and marketing a new product. Kind of think like them. Yeah. So I learned the hard way by not having any sales. That's not the way to go. So the lesson I learned was think like my customer. And I would say the second biggest thing that I've learned the hard way is to really, really sort of empathize with your customers. Mm. Think like them. And I'm really fortunate that I have had mostly super, super nice, wonderful customers on Etsy who are always willing to work with me and kind of appreciate the whole idea that I'm just a human at the other end. They're not ordering from, Big Lots. They're talking to an artist. And there are times I'm human, I make a mistake. And I find that if I always will say, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, and talk to them like another human being, I made a mistake and let me fix it for you. Mm, yeah. And it's much more important to have a happy customer that wants to come back and wants to feel like they made a new creative friend than to say, well, I don't care about that, about what happened. It's not my fault that got lost in shipping or whatever. I really try to look at what's the fairest way for both of us that my customer's going to walk away happy.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And customer service, I think, is an ingredient to a successful business that sometimes, we get lost in our own feelings and forget that, if we can make that other person happy, even though it costs us something and we feel that it shouldn't cost us, that's a way to grow our business and our brand. And, there are some stores we can think of that have grown their brands just based on their customer service.
That's true. That's true. And so with that in mind, another lesson for people who are thinking of starting a shop, and if they're making something handmade, make it the very best you can make it, because if there was ever a time when you're wrapping that item up to ship it out and you think, oh, I don't know, I don't like how that looks. I mean, not to the point that you spend longer than you should to make a profit, but if you can't make that product and make it something you're proud of and that you would be happy to get, don't let it go out the door,
Yeah. Yes, that's great advice. Now, Bonnie, the course that you're going to be offering on Skillshare is for people who are either struggling to make sales in their existing shop or don't know how to set up a shop at all. What advice, other than to sign up with Skillshare and do your class, would you give to that person who is listening right now that is just in the midst of the struggle to see something positive come from their Etsy shop?
Oh, there's just so many things.
Go for it.
Well, I think with and not to keep going back to the class, but I gave that particular question a lot of consideration, what you just asked me. And I think first off, having a product that is desirable, there's a purpose for it, people are going to want it, and do market research, look on Etsy, and then think about, can I make that? Is it worth it for me to make it? Can I make a profit selling that? So have an item that you're confident will sell. And I also think it's important to think of the big picture. Every part that you will have to do if you open an Etsy shop. Think about the packaging, think about the photography, think about the listing. There's a lot you have to learn, and not that it's not possible. It's certainly possible. There's a lot of us out there who have found a lot of success on Etsy, but just know that going in, and start learning. And I think define what you want to do, like we've talked about during this podcast, sort of sit down and make a list of what your goals for your business and your life are, and see if Etsy is a good fit for what you're selling and for your lifestyle. And for me, it was.
Okay. Thank you. That's good advice. And I think that's probably the first time that it's been said on the podcast is assess whether Etsy itself is a good fit for, what you want to do. It is for a lot of people, especially, someone who's listening to the podcast, but then it's not for some. And that's just a reality. And it might take some trial and error. Maybe you want to try the platform and find out for yourself if it is or isn't. But if it's not, be open to the fact that perhaps it's not,
Right. Well, and I think a lot of people don't give it a fighting chance because they don't do all the homework first before they set up their shop.
Yeah.
They don't really know how to create a listing that is really going to convert customers, and they just don't do their research beforehand. So they don't sell anything, just like I did. I did this myself. And then I go, oh, Etsy doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Well, you have to work it. You have to decide, am I going to put in the effort and renew my listings and update my photography when it needs and keep adding new products and be available for my customers and all those things.
Yeah.
So just do your homework, and it might be, you might find that, wow, that sounds like really intriguing and like something that I could do every day.
So that's just a sneak peek into what you'll get in Bonnie's course on Skillshare. Again, I will link to it in the notes for this episode so you can check it out. You have 2 months free of Skillshare to do that. And there's so much more in there. I think beyond the 2 months, you will probably want to stick around if you just like to learn. And it doesn't have to be about Etsy. There, like Bonnie mentioned before, so many courses in Skillshare that you can take, some for fun, some to help you be a better business owner. So check that out. Now, Bonnie, in addition to the other resources mentioned and your upcoming class, are there any other resources that you use and have found particularly helpful to either running your Etsy shop or your business in general that you can share with us?
As a matter of fact, there's a long resource list. And I actually, if you take the class, I include that in the class.
Okay.
I have a resource list. And I mean, I can name a few here now off the top of my head.
You can
Your
just name
podcast.
two. Two
Okay.
is okay, because then, if you have a list, that will
Yeah.
probably be easier to go through the class.
Right. I've got like 30 resources
Oh,
on it.
wow.
But the Etsy Seller Handbook
Oh,
is
yes.
just a no-brainer. It's like it's there. It's available. Read it. Learn it, live it, love it, because it's there to help you. And really, the people at Etsy, they want to help you. They don't succeed unless you succeed. And I see a lot of times in the forums, people are like very angry and, oh, what are they doing? And they're just trying to undermine us and stuff. And I don't understand that at all, because why would they? It doesn't make any sense. So there's my resources. The Seller Handbook and the forums are really great places to go for information. So, and it's easily accessible, and it's accurate. That's the other thing. You're getting it from the horse's mouth.
From the horse's mouth, exactly. And so I will link to all the resources we've mentioned in this episode, including the Etsy Seller Handbook and the forums. And like Bonnie mentioned, yes, when you go to the forums, you might run into some negativity from some of the other sellers, and that's okay. It's a free world. People are free to express themselves. Look past that. Get the good stuff from the forums that you can, and ignore the things that are not beneficial to you.
I agree. I totally agree.
Now, Bonnie, what's the best way someone listening right now can get in touch with you or connect with you outside of the podcast if they want to?
Well, you can find me I'm on Instagram a lot at Bonnie Lecat. I'd love to have any listeners connect with me there. Okay. I'm on Pinterest, also at Bonnie Lecat. I have a Facebook fan page, and that you can find me there at Bonnie Lecat Designs. And if you ever want to email me directly, you can reach me at blecat@bonnielecat.com. And I have contact information on my website, which you've mentioned, which is bonnielecatdesigns.com.
Okay. And your email is blecat@bonnielecat.com, not Bonnie Lecat Designs?
No, it's just bonnielecat.com. Yes,
okay.
blecat@bonnielecat.com.
Okay. So I will link to everywhere that you can connect with Bonnie in the show notes for this episode, as well as her website and her Etsy shop. Again, her Etsy shop is Bonnie Lecat. That's BONNIELECAT. And her website is Bonnie Lecat Designs. Again, it's BONNIELECATDESIGNS.com. Sorry, I just feel like I need to spell it out so people get it right.
I appreciate that.
But I will have the link to all those in the show notes for this episode as well. Bonnie, thank you so much for being my guest. I look forward to your Skillshare class. I particularly like Skillshare because of the format of the classes. They're not overwhelming. You can get in there, and I feel like the instructors get right to the point, because I feel like there's some rule that they can't waste time with fluff. Just get to it. And so I'm excited to see what your class has to offer.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And it's just been a pleasure chatting with you. I love talking all things Etsy and small biz, and it's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back next time.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.